Previously on El Flow.
And I was everywhere. He was singing in the clubs with the Jamaicans. People was loving him more than the artist of the show that night. So you know that you're a good artist when people, are coming to see you and there's a bigger artist on that same show.
We never foresee that it was going to take off. And we didn't foresee that this type of music would turn into something like what it has done. I guess that was the starting of that new type of music, reggaeton.
Have you ever heard a song and thought, this sounds familiar, but you couldn't really put your finger on when or where you heard it before, or if you ever really heard it at all? Well, that happened to Wayne Marshall, and the inability to put his finger on it drove him mad, as in it sparked a years-long obsession. You see, Wayne is a musicologist and professor at the Berklee College of Music in Boston, one of the preeminent music academies in the world. So when he listens to music, he listens to it differently than you and me.
No, I don't listen to music like a normal person. Absolutely not. I mean, I've obviously trained my ears in various ways. I've trained them as a musicologist, but I've also trained them essentially as a hip-hop producer. I hear things and I start to do pattern recognition and I start to say, okay, this is coming from here, this is coming from there. That's from the skull snaps. Oh, that's from the funky drummer.
Musicology can mean a lot of things to different people. But to Wayne, it boils down to an anthropological approach to the study of music. Or in his words,
I am interested in quote-unquote the music itself, the notes and the rhythms and all that. But for me, those things like melody and rhythm and harmony only mean something when they mean something to someone, when they recognize it and they say, that's the sound of home, or that's the sound of somewhere else.
Wayne describes the first time he ever heard reggaeton as an epiphany.
The first glimmer I had of reggaeton was in 2001 when I was back at my old high school here in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I was a substitute teacher and I was always looking for something to connect with the students over. And one student came in one time with one of those Case Logic binders. Remember those things that would hold hundreds of CDs?
Do I remember? I'm pretty sure I still have one of those somewhere.
And I'm like, what is this? And he says, it's Spanish reggae. It was one of those kind of moments because I'm like, there's an entire world here and it hasn't come sort of above ground yet, but it's gonna be huge.
Wayne happens to specialize in reggae and dancehall. So listening to the songs in the CD case, he quickly recognized familiar sounds, samples, loops, rhythms.
So I started to catalog those rhythms more or less informally at first in reggaeton. And what I did start to find was that there were some that were much more frequent than others, especially this one called Dembow. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 da da ka 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 rakata rakata rakata, right?
Wayne found the so-called Dembow beat in so many reggaeton songs that if you plotted out the results in a pie chart, it would look like Pac-Man, somewhere between 75 and 90%, an insanely high number for any musical genre. Wayne heard the beat dressed up, distorted, and disguised in all types of ways, but always present at the base of it all. It was almost as if this beat was a requirement for any reggaeton song.
So for me, there was something really kind of profound about the idea that a single sample could be so central and could be also so generative, right? That look, we can put 1,000 songs on this one underlying rhythm.
For Wayne, the next step was obvious. Find out who made this. This is El Flow, a journey to the roots of reggaeton. My name is Lilia Luciano, a CBS News correspondent born and raised in Puerto Rico, the cradle of reggaeton. You're listening to Episode 6, The Mystery of Dembow. One of the first things Wayne noticed about why the Dembow rhythm sounded so familiar is that if you strip it down to its core, there's a timeless beat. In Spanish, some call it tumpa tumpa, as in tumpa 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 tumpa. You get it. It's one of the oldest drum patterns in the planet, like literally since the invention of drums. And since drumming, like human civilization, started in Africa, that's where this beat comes from.
It's really classic, African, Afro-diasporic rhythm at some level. And that's why it's been known by lots of names everywhere, including the habanera for a while. It was known as the tango. Tango music, has this as its basic rhythm as well. A lot of Cuban music has had that in it.
Intrigued by the riddle before him, Wayne dove into online chat rooms looking for clues. And he kept seeing mentions of a song called Dembow by the dancehall superstar Shabba Ranks. A Dembow song with a Dembow beat. Mystery solved, right? Not quite.
What I knew right away was that the rhythm I was hearing in reggaeton that they were calling Dembow was not the rhythm from the Shabba Ranks song. I could listen to the kick and the snare and say, I hear the resemblance, but clearly they're sampling something other than the backing track to Shabba Ranks. So that automatically told me, there's something missing in this story.
Let's take this step by step. When dancehall was born on the streets of Kingston in the 1970s, it came with its own subculture, customs, and codes. Case in point, rhythms, or riddims if you're in Jamaica. They're the building blocks of the genre. Producers would create rhythms to give to vocalists so they, in turn, could make their own versions. A popular rhythm could have tens or even hundreds of versions.
Jamaica is always competing with each other. The producers, the singers, it's a competition. It's a competition who can make it more popular. Because they version the same song over and over and over in different ways.
That's Patricia Chin, or Miss Pat, co-founder of VP Records, the world's largest distributor of reggae and dancehall.
Maybe they do it with a different musician, maybe they put more horns, maybe they put a different DJ to DJ in the rhythm. So they call it version, and it makes the record sell longer because it stays on the chart more. And that's how I think reggae music has developed.
So it turns out that Shabba Ranks' Dembow was a version of this instrumental called Fish Market, created by the influential production duo Steely and Clavey.
So the problem there, of course, is that if you go back to Fish Market, that's not what the reggaeton guys were sampling either. So this didn't actually lead me to the end of the story. Instead, I ended up eventually figuring out that the record the reggaeton guys were sampling was a cover of Dembow, was a relick, a reproduction of Dembow done in New York City and Long Island by Jamaicans working with Panamanians at the time to basically do Spanish language cover songs of the hottest songs coming out of Jamaica.
A cover of a cover. Now we're getting somewhere. In 1990, when Dembow was released, the most sought-after studio among dancehall artists in New York was HCNF, run by dancehall mastermind Philip Smart. A lot of the Panamanian artists we met last episode recorded their hit songs at HCNF, including El General and Nando Boom, who on this occasion were brought into the studio by the label Superpower Records. The producers at Superpower knew the rhythm on Dembow was lit and wanted to record a version ASAP. But Shabba Ranks did not release an instrumental, so they worked with HCNF on an imitation of that rhythm. Between El General and Nando Boom, they recorded 3 songs on the HCNF instrumental. El General did a song called Sombo, and Nando Boom initially recorded a track called Pensión, but later did a second version called Ellos Venia. That was a pretty direct cover of Shabba Ranks' controversial lyrics on Dembow.
It's a song about bowing to imperialism and foreign pressure and that kind of thing, right? He says, freedom for black people come now. That means say the oppressors them just bow, right? So he wants to invert this and say, we're not going to bow to the oppressors.
The anti-imperialist claim definitely has its merit. As we discussed in episode 1, it's a big part of the whole birth of the genre. But the song is also seen as being homophobic.
The other part of the bowing here is more of a kind of literal bowing, like bending over. And so that song, Dembow, is mostly an anti-oral sex song. A lot of times people just dismiss it as homophobic. I do think it has homophobia built into it as well, but it's more broadly about taboo sexual practices, especially, what has been called sodomy, whether it's oral sex or anal sex.
The new songs brought instant attention from Spanish-speaking listeners, especially Nando Boom's Ellos Venia. But there was a problem. At least there was for Wayne Marshall. None of the tracks included an instrumental version or even a clean sample long enough to turn into a loop. It was back to square one, the internet.
There were lots of Panamanians talking about their place in the story and talking about, the importance of certain records to the Panamanian reggae and Espanol sound. Panamanians were saying, oh, it's not Dembow, it's Pounder.
Listen, if you're confused, don't worry. All you have to do is summon your inner Ace Ventura. Pounder is Dembow? Dembow is Pounder! Yeah, it's that simple.
Once I discovered Pounder, that seemed like a real key.
The song Pounder was recorded by the Jamaican duo Bobo General and Sleepy Wonder at HCNF. Pounder had the same beat as the others and posed the same challenges. But when Wayne flipped the record, there it was, a full instrumental version called Dub Mix 2, credited to Dennis the Menace. Wayne cross-checked Dub Mix 2 with reggaeton songs and instrumentals coming out of Puerto Rico, claiming to be the definitive reggaeton rhythm.
And so that allowed me to verify that, that's the one that's being sampled. Because when I listened to Dub Mix 2, alongside Dembow Original, that's Dub Mix 2.
Sleepy Wonder remembers that the day he recorded at HCNF with Nando Boom, he didn't even know what rhythm he was going to be using. In fact, when he got to the studio, Dennis the Menace was still putting the finishing touches on it. Even so, he had plenty of lyrics ready to go.
We write lyrics every day because we were competitive, and we used to battle rap a lot. So I will never be caught not on my toes back then. And that day, I think like 3 or 4 songs was recorded on that rhythm. I know Nando Boom was one for sure, and The Pounder was another one. I think we were the second artist to go into voice on it. And just the hook alone, go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere, go tell it on the mountain, that the general and the wonder come again. Come on, so once we did that, the whole studio was on fire. Everybody back there was just saying, this is it, this is it.
It wasn't long before Sleepy Wonder was hearing a familiar rhythm all around him in New York. But it wasn't Pounder. It was something new.
Those Puerto Ricans in New York, they're very proud people when they drive by with those booming systems, Yeah, I could walk 2 blocks, 3 New York blocks, and hear that played 3 or 4 times in different people's cars or just coming through the window of an apartment. When I tell people, I had something to do with reggaeton, I probably get a laugh.
What Sleepy Wonder didn't know was that his record was a hit in Puerto Rico. But not because of Pounder, because of Dub Mix 2. This is DJ Adam, a Puerto Rican DJ and producer who's been around as long as reggaeton on the island.
La canción de Pounder, esa canción aquí en la isla, eso no funcionó. Eso fue un relleno para nosotros.
The runaway hit was Nando Boom's Ellos Venia. People were going crazy over it.
Está corriendo la canción de Nando Boom. Todo el mundo loco.
But just like Wayne a decade later, they couldn't find the instrumental. Until one day, DJ Adam was at his favorite record store and one of the ladies working there shows him Pounder. But he was like, meh, until she turned the record around.
Cuando ella gira el disco y lo pone, que yo oigo esa pista. Mira, esta es la pista que todo el mundo está buscando.
He was like, this is the track that everybody's been looking for. And once we had that rhythm, the rest is history.
Una vez esa pista llegó a la mano de nosotros, wow, ya tú sabes la historia.
And that's the truth. Because the legacy of Pounder isn't as much about who made it, but about what was made as a result. And that legacy is undeniable.
Es lo que define es reggaetón como tal. Es esa pista.
For DJ Adam, that beat defines reggaeton. But if you don't agree, please take a look around. It's been 30 years since Pounder came out. And what do people still like?
Y estamos en el 2021. ¿Y qué es lo que le gusta a la gente? El tumpa tumpa. Es ese Dembow. Pounder.
On the next episode of El Flow, Puerto Rico takes over. El Flow is a production of Exile Content Studio in partnership with iHeartRadio's My Cultura podcast network. The show is hosted by me, Lilia Luciano, and was created and produced by Vitenis Di Julis. Production and sound design by Dixo. Additional production by David Quiñones and Mirna Couto. Story editing by Nuria Net. Original music by Truco. Production supervision by Álvaro Céspedes. Executive producers for Exile Content Studio are Nando Vila, Isaac Lee, and Alejandro Uribe. Executive producers for iHeartMedia are Connell Byrne and Giselle Bances. For more podcasts from iHeart, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.